What do you do when there's nothing that differentiates your product from the competition? Meet the power of positioning. Through strategic differentiation, you can stand out, create a value proposition, and delight your customers, even if you're selling something exactly like everyone else. In today's video, we'll be reviewing the 3 key questions that you must answer to successfully position your product or offer. I've spent the last 10 years diving deep into how to build brands on the most competitive marketplace in the world, helping products that were exactly like their competitors soar to the top of page 1 and achieve massive growth. These 3 key questions will help you hone in on your customers, refine your offer, and develop your brand identity. But before we get into the 3 essential questions, we have some homework to do. If you want to give customers a reason to choose you, you have to understand why they're not choosing you. Because the goal of all of our efforts is to create contrast, to widen the gap, and even create some friction between you and your competitors. If you want to know a quick way to do really effective competitor analysis, I have a video that walks you through my exact process. And as we go through these 3 key questions, you really need to remember that you're not answering them in a silo. You're answering them in a way that will create that contrast. So what do I mean when I say contrast? If we were talking colors, low contrast would be a pastel pink next to a pale orange. In other words, they're almost indistinguishable if the brightness is turned way down. Whereas high contrast colors would be aiming for purple versus yellow or orange versus blue. The difference should be obvious and instantly be able to tell them apart. So I realize that that's color theory, but that's exactly what we also want to do when we're thinking about marketing and brand building and making sure that it is immediately obvious to your customers why they should choose you over their competition, because it's crystal clear to them what makes you unique and special and different. So we've been building an imaginary brand together, and that brand is built around a single ingredient treat, a bully stick. It is just 100% pure beef, which means that the product itself really does not have anything distinctive that we can lean into to differentiate it. We really need to have that positioning strategy figured out if we want any chance at success in the short term or the long run. And so let's imagine today that you are starting this company with me, that we are going to be selling bully sticks. And we have 3 questions that we need to answer to begin to put together the strategic framework that we're going to follow, not only for your product page optimization, but for every piece of marketing that you create, for how you put together your ad strategy, for how you're going to be showing up on social media. This is an essential component of that is so important to ensuring that you really set yourself up for success. So the first question is related to brand identity. Who do I want my brand to be? Feminine and dainty, rugged, hardy, and survivalist, big city, no nonsense, minimalist, silly, suburban, almost ready for retirement, dad humor. All of these different types of personas may sound familiar to you because in some ways this is overlapping with what you would be doing from the customer avatar perspective, except now we are taking that clearly defined target customer profile and we are creating something similar for our brand. So imagining if your brand was a living, breathing person, and how would they show up in the world? What would their personality be? What kind of humor would or wouldn't they have? What things do they care about? Answering every single one of those questions that you would be asking for your customer avatar, but now from the position of who you aspire your brand to be. This should be a really fun exercise. This should be something that you can get playful with. And it's also, you don't have to take it so seriously. And then in the sense of this is something that is finite. And once you created it, it's unchangeable. Your brand, just like people, can evolve and change over time. So if you went one direction and you feel like now that's no longer true or not the direction that you want to continue heading in, you can change that. Obviously, you want to be mindful and thoughtful about how you approach that, especially if you already have a big following and a bunch of loyal customers who may have emotional buy-in to who that brand identity is. But we see rebrands happen all the time, so it's still not out of the question, even in that sense. It's just something to be mindful of. The second question is, what customers am I speaking to? So we are now going back to that customer avatar and really thinking about, who am I talking to specifically? Not in generalities, not in a random group of people, but imagining that we are speaking to one individual. That one individual is an encapsulation of who our target customer is. We know exactly what motivates them, exactly what their pain points are. We understand them on an incredibly deep level, which then allows us to really be able to target not only our messaging, but even our creatives. So thinking about, if you're creating lifestyle images with pictures of customers, how can you reflect images of customers that are resembling who your customer avatar is? And that's everything from style to the kinds of environments that they would be in. If there's somebody that lives in a large city, then it wouldn't really make sense to have lifestyle images of them using your product in a rural setting. You would want them to maybe be in a more modern apartment. So that's even going to affect the kind of design aesthetic. If you have pictures of inside the customer's home, all of those details are really important and help to set the stage for that connection that you're wanting to drive. Because as we're talking about, every step of the way, we want to be creating contrast. So we want to be creating contrast between brands, but we also want to be creating contrast between potential customers. So we want to make it clear to your target customers that this item is specifically for them, not for anybody and everybody, but directly made for their concerns and needs. So are they kid-free by choice? Maybe they're millennials with disposable incomes who want the best for their dogs, outdoors people who see their animals as their adventure companions, wealthy empty nesters who have extra love and attention to give, young parents with a lot on their plates and overwhelmed by also having to care for an energetic dog. Obviously, each one of those profiles is very distinct and different, and how you would create imagery that would resonate with them, the kinds of slang that you might use, or the references that you're going to make, or perhaps even the types of dog breeds that these people tend to choose, are all going to be different and will then inform how you are choosing to position your brand and your product. And so it's so important to really get clarity around this. And then the third is, what are those call outs that are most important in your offer? What are you really centering your offer around? What is that thing that is most compelling, that is going to create that contrast in relationship to all of the other competitors that are out there? So if you're selling a bully stick and you are thinking that natural or even organic or scent free, or however they refer to it, if either one of those elements is going to be a defining core part of your offer, then you're playing a losing game, because there are many other companies who are already doing a really good job of positioning their products around those defining characteristics, who are well established, who have lots of reviews, who are well known, who are reputable. And so if you're just trying to go after that same offer, then it's going to be really hard to gain traction. So you need to figure out where you can lean into something that it may not even be different in terms of the product itself, but the way that you're engaging around what the product offers. Managing destructive energy, promoting dental health and fresh breath, engage and entertain, nutrient-rich, guilt-free treat, channel their inner wolf. So we can be thinking about a lot of different ways that we can approach how we are positioning the product itself and making this offer to the customer. And that is also going to be informed by the first two questions that we're answering. So we will have more clarity based on who the brand identity is and who your target customers are to be able to really figure out how can we position that offer in a way that is going to allow for connection between the brand and the customer and really excite them. And of course, always keeping in mind that we want to be different from what is already on the market. And with this information, it's going to influence your colors and design, the language that you choose, how you communicate, the fears and problems that you identify with, the way that you price your product, line extensions. So what other products might you offer in the future, where you market and how, the way you engage with your customers. It's really essentially influences everything. So let's look at a couple of examples. First being Dude Wipes. So Dude Wipes is selling wet wipes. Nothing new. Lots of established legacy brands that are in this space, and they're not necessarily innovating on the product itself all of that much. In fact, a lot of their marketing, like even if you look directly at their homepage, they are positioning themselves not against other wet wipes, but against toilet paper. And that's because they really understand who they are as a brand, who their target customer is, and then from there, how to really position their offer. And they recognize that wet wipes have not been traditionally marketed to men. And so there is this whole untapped market of men that would be interested in a product like this, but they're not switching from one wet wipe brand to another. They're switching from traditional paper to buying a more premium wet wipe kind of product. And so you would only know that if you were really clear on who your customer is, you understand their buying behavior. And then from there, you see that all of their marketing has a lot of humor in it and even slightly edgy humor. And they're able to do that because they know who their customers are and they have a really defined identity of who their brand is, even down to the way that their CEO shows up and creates content on LinkedIn. It is all so super honed in and clear and has a very strong positioning strategy that is cohesive throughout the entire experience. And so they've taken a product that is not so unique in function or form, and they have really created their own category by getting clarity around these 3 points and really committing to and leaning into a very strong differentiation strategy. Another company that does a fantastic job of this is Bloom Nutrition. So they got their start with green drink mixes, which that's not a new product. You've been able to go to health food stores for years and had a variety of different options available to you. But all of those are coming from the more traditional health food, either more kind of hippie oriented brands or really just focused on a more general population. But you see with Bloom, they are catering to women in their 20s and 30s, maybe even 40s. And that is obvious in the font that they choose, the way that they position their products. Even you see the UGC, the user generated content on their homepage is all women talking about how much they love this product. So if we go to the greens and superfoods page, we can see that from the pastels to the design of the glassware and the images, they have a clear sense of who their target customer is, who they are as a brand, and then from there, how they can build out their offer to cater to a customer that may have felt a little bit looked over with the offering that had existed previously, even in contrast to another large D2C brand like Athletic Greens, which is much more masculine in nature. And I realize that in these examples, I'm using more general terms like feminine or masculine, but there is a lot more refinement and nuance there. But just for the sake of time, it's worth noting that it's very easy to see that differentiation strategy at work. So you can see both with Dude Wipes and with Bloom that a core component of their success as brands, in fact, perhaps the most important thing that they are doing on a branding and marketing level, is creating that contrast by having clarity around these 3 points. And that has allowed them to be able to catapult to a level of success in incredibly saturated, highly competitive marketplaces. So if you want to also tap into that kind of growth, then you need to really lean into getting clarity and making decisions to lean into these 3 points if you want to unlock the success that you're after. And in order to take that to the next level, I highly recommend that you watch the video that should be coming up here right now. It's a must watch. So go ahead, click over into that. I hope to see you over there. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching. Bye.